Whoa. On the move. We're moving. Shucks almighty. Uh-oh. The traffic is getting insane now. Stay ahead of it, people. Move with the flow of traffic. Defensive. Check all your mirrors. On the move. Check it out. Gee whiz. So many things to talk about. Industry things. You know, I've tried recording this episode maybe about 3 or 4 times, and I get cut off. And so I'm going to give it one more whirl. I wanted to devote an episode to my good friend Jerold Howard, who has Jerold Howard was the first professional stop-motion animator I think I met ever. I was on my way to an interview. I was going to San Francisco State University, and I was majoring in animation. I had just made a stop-motion film. And I went to that school with a good friend of mine, Ethan Merrick. If you guys ever use the E-mover, which is, it's essentially like a heavy foot or some sort of weight with a smooth bottom, and then you mount a camera to it. Sometimes it has a Manfrotto head, a little geared pan-tilt roll head mounted to, and you slide it around. So instead of motion control or track, you slide the camera anywhere you want to go. You just need a smooth set, and you just slide that baby around anywhere you want. That's the E-mover, named after Ethan. Anyway, I went to school with Ethan. This was in 93. I had just transferred from from Sonoma State University to San Francisco. I changed my major from theater arts and sculpture to and painting to animation. And I was taking animation from Patricia Amlin, who was just such a sage, wise, wonderful teacher. Good Lord. She said things like, this is one of her quotes that stuck with me. She's so many great little quotes. But one of the ones I think I like to pass along to other students is, you are where you're supposed to be. That one really, really stuck with me. You are where you are supposed to be. It's very empowering, you know, even when you're going through hard times. I think that's a good one to hang on to. Anyway, Ethan said, you know, you made this great, beautiful little film. You gotta bring it down to try to get a job on this TV show. Channel 7 was ABC back then, in the Bay Area at least. And ABC had a Saturday morning cartoon that was all done in stop motion called Bump in the Night. And they were crewing up for animators. And Ethan was hip way longer before me. He interned on Nightmare Before Christmas. He knew where stuff was happening because he was cued into the community, the professional stop motion community of the Bay Area. And so Ethan was like, they're crewing up, dude. And he got a job immediately on Bump in the Night as one of the animators. I said, dude, my film sucks. He's like, no, it's really good. You got to bring it in. I was like, it doesn't even have titles. He's like, it doesn't matter. Just bring it. And I got on the bus It was like the Bayshore bus going from downtown San Francisco to Brisbane. And I encountered Jerold Howard on the bus. And we struck up a conversation. And we started talking. And lo and behold, he was going to the exact same place I was. And I either encountered Jerold on the way or on the way back. I can't really remember. And he lived downtown San Francisco. And so that was his commute into work. Brisbane was a little south of San Francisco. And so I caught a few buses to get south of Market, and I jumped on that bus. San Francisco's great because you don't need a car there. Public transportation was wonderful. And housing was cheap back in the day. Back in the early 90s, it was like you could find a room in a Victorian flat, for like $400 a month. There's this thing called roommate referral. It was pre-internet, pre-Craigslist, pre all that stuff. It was just like landlords would post ads for vacancies, and so it was fun. It was like a bohemian kind of transient, friendly, artist-friendly city, believe it or not. And so you didn't need a car, and it was cheap, and you could plug right in. So I meet Jerold, and we strike up this conversation, and immediately I realize what a wellspring of wisdom and information Jerold Howard is. And he was immediately talking about animation with me. And so I ended up getting that job. I had a good interview. They liked my film, the animation supervisor was Owen Clate, who had done a bunch of the Oogie Boogie stuff on Nightmare Before Christmas. He was a Gumby guy. Great animator. And a really, really good supervisor. Just had a steady, calm, pleasant, sweet, encouraging demeanor. He's just such a warm, sweet, but a commanding presence. Very unassuming, but his actions seemed to speak louder than his words, and he led by example, and he was just like a really, really good supervisor. And everybody on the crew was a mentor. I was working with guys like Jerold Howard. Jerold Howard came out of Will Vinton Studios before, Leica bought it. The original Will Vinton Studios was where all the studs, the badass animators came from. And so he learned how to animate with clay, with plasticine. And Will Vinton was light years ahead of the Bay Area in so many respects because it had been around longer, and Jerold went far back, like all the way back to animating raisins. There was all these California raisin spots. They did some of the effects animation for Return to Oz, which was a Walter Murch film. Jesus, it's such a beautiful film. Some of the stop motion in Return to Oz is so badass. And so all those guys worked with clay. And I don't know if you've ever animated clay. Animated clay. Sculpted under hot lights. and they're shooting on 35 millimeter film, and it was the vanguard. It was like the training ground for some of the best animators in the world. You know, I think I've listed some of these people before, but like, you know, John Ashley was a standout for me. Chuck Duke, so great. Too many to name. Jeff Mulcaster. Anyway, Jerold was one of these guys, and I remember when Bump in the Night wrapped, the studio heads, Ken Pontac and David Blyman, Ichioka Blyman, allowed artists to shoot their own stuff for a little while, which is exactly what Skellington did between Nightmare and James. They sort of gave, you know, Henry, to his credit, opened the doors to Skellington because they knew that they were going to try to get another movie in there, and there was like a gap of time, and Disney, I guess, was still paying the rent. So they, before James and the Giant Peach, kind of, maybe it was in pre-production at that point, I don't know, they had all this stage space and equipment that was just collecting dust, and they said, hey, you know what, let's open it up. And so I think Ken and David, you know, modeled some of their generosity off of that trend that was already happening. And everybody was so young and so talented and so hungry. And so people, I tried to shoot a personal project after Bump in the Night wrapped. You know, we did, I don't know, 3 seasons or something. And then that was my first job. I thought it would never end. I thought, oh, I'm a made man. Here I am. And people shot things. Jerold shot, I remember so clearly, it was an advertisement for tulips. It was like these flowers, these talking flowers. And he shot, I think it was on green screen, these tulips. And it just was like, I was so in awe of the whole process. You know, I would timidly walk over and just peek into his stage, and he was so open and generous, and he showed me what he was shooting. And back then we had these really Paleolithic old school frame grabbers. This guy Alex Hansen had written the software for the very first frame grabber that was running off of a PC. It was running off of a really early Apple computer. And it held something like 256 frames. And so you could do like you could get a 10-second shot on there, 24 frames a second. And so none of the 35 millimeter cameras had, you know, you didn't have a live feed coming out of it like you do with digital cameras. So everybody would set up a little CCD camera, like a video camera, video tap, into one of these frame grabbers. And so there was a little parallax between, you know, the frame grabber camera was, you try to get the lens to sort of match as closely as possible to the film. You know, your hero image, your main image was 35 millimeter. So, you know, all the DPs had light meters and were, you know, you didn't really know what you had until you had sent the film off to the lab, and you gotten a transfer onto some sort of videotape format. Usually like Betacam or Betacam SP, I think was sort of like the video archiving kind of like high end. And it was SD. I don't even know if it was SD. Jesus, it might have been lower format than that. But I remember looking at Jerold's stuff going, like, just my jaw dropped. I was like, it was so smooth, and like he just had such a supple touch with these puppets. And it was a whole thing that I had no idea. I had just done a season of a show that was essentially like armatured puppets that were foam latex. I knew nothing about clay. All I knew of clay was like the California raisin spots and like, the Sledgehammer video that, what's his face did. I didn't know what it looked like, how it worked. And there's Jerold, and he's working so cleanly, and he's animating these talking tulips. And the tulips had 2 lips. Come on, I'm a dad. Whatever. No, and the lip sync was beautiful. It was, he was animating on 1s, which, I was used to TV. Pretty much everybody was shooting on 2s. And I was just blown away. It was like, it opened a whole new layer of sophistication in my mind. I was just like, wow, I didn't realize animation could look like that. And we became pals. And so much so that we ended up sharing a studio space in San Francisco in the Western Addition, kind of near the Panhandle. It was me, Mike Eater, and Jerold Howard had this place. We were referred to it under Mike Eater's business name, which was Freak Show Films. We just called it Freak Show. And we had a little stage space there. And we were freelance stop-motion animators living in San Francisco. We would jump on a commercial or a TV series or a movie, and then we would go immediately on unemployment. And, we shared studio space there. And Jerold shot a personal film there. Jerold shot See the Truth. Gorgeous, sweetie pie of a film. And it was just so nice to see Jerold, shooting 35 millimeter on his own shoestring independent budget. He built everything himself. He built his own sets. He built his own puppets. He lit the thing himself. He shot every frame of it. It's a really deep short film about perception, racism. It's super deep. It's about, like how the legacy of racism gets passed down, and how how to sort of break the chain of hate, and judgmental perceptions, and how do we tolerate one another when we're so different? And it's just a heartfelt, beautiful film, and I was just so blown away. I mean, all the projects I shot while I was there were ill-conceived. I didn't have the discipline necessary. And so watching Jerold really inspired me. He was building his sets out of, cheap, found materials. He was so organized. he would give himself like a list of things he was going to do in the morning, and then he would knock all those things off his list. Like he created a schedule for himself. And I let personal projects just die on the vine. I didn't have discipline. I wasn't, I had played more video games and smoked more weed in that studio than I did any kind of artwork whatsoever. And so I learned a lot just watching him. And then when I finally got my act together to start shooting my personal film, Fred, Jerold helped me. Jerold built most of what you see in the backstage. The backstage of my short film, Fred, there's two locations really. There's the hallway and the backstage. And the backstage has a flight of stairs that come down. Jerold built that. It's got this beautiful little sink. Jerold built that. He sculpted it out of like a hard foam and then coated it with like a kind of an epoxy resin, painted it. He had the skills. He could do anything. He could build stuff, and he understood kind of like that cartoony aesthetic. He didn't build things like perfectly miniature. He would kind of alter the angles of doorways, and so I learned so much, and it was a real shot in the arm. Getting Jerold to sort of help, give me a leg up and help me kind of motivate to actually do something. He didn't charge me a dime. What did I do? I gave him a thank you in my credits. That was like the extent of how I paid Jerold back for his generosity. But yeah, that's whoa. Okay, all right. I'm almost having a head-on collision. Excuse me. The Tesla driver gets them right away. Alrighty. Okay. Anyway, what else? I'm here. I'm actually picking Matt up. So I should probably... Maybe this is a two-part. But I just want to celebrate Jerold because he is such a meaningful part of he was a mentor. He helped me grow and become, he gave me a sense of independence. Okay, here's a great Jerold thing. He would say, stop motion goes in big pendulum swings. It's hot for 10 years and then it's not for 10 years. And oh my God, here we are in the middle of a 10-year slow swing, but it's coming back. Another thing that Jerold said was, the world is hungry for animation. We got to feed them. Yeah, that's our job. We are fixing up hot meals of frames. We're like short order cooks, like order up, bing, bing, bing. Yes, that is what we do. And so many goodies. Jerold Howard is still doing independent work. He's up in Portland. I think he's still, I'm sure he has a car, but I think he still gets around on his bike. He's so smart and efficient about how he deals with he's just a badass, and he's an inspiration to me. And this bud's for you, brother. I'm so stoked to know Jerold Howard. And this community is richer and better for guys like Jerold, who are generous and share and are welcoming to younger animators. When I came on the scene, I didn't know nobody. The two people I met first were Jerold Howard and Eduardo Navarro, was on the camera team. It's funny, over the years, most of my really, really close, good buddies turn out to be camera people. I don't know what it is. I just really I'm drawn to people in that department. And Eduardo was really super nice to me, immediately welcoming. And thank God, when you start a new job, you're so nervous. You're so insecure. You're so self-conscious. And it takes a secure, sweet person to make you feel welcome. And that was the gift that Jerold gave me, my first couple days at Danger Productions. Jerold Howard was there, and we continued to sort of commute on that bus together. We got deep. We chatted. We talked about personal projects. There's so many things. I mean, I was trying to get this short film off the ground called The Adventures of Pigeon Man, which was about a scientist that grows a little human embryo in a pigeon egg, and when it hatches, it's a really small, super small human, and the little pigeon-sized human witnesses these government agents come in and kill the scientist, that his dad, essentially, that grew him. And so he had to go in hiding because, the government agents ransacked the... So it was like an origin story, kind of like Batman, but it was The Adventures of Pigeon Man. And this guy dresses like a pigeon. And I wrote this when I was in my 20s, so... it was going to be a stop motion of a guy, a little man, dressing like a pigeon. And, becomes friends with pigeons, lives on roofs, and makes a pigeon suit, and flies around spying on people. And, of course, when you're in your 20s, you got to have a scene where the beautiful lady's taking a shower. It's, I'm not saying this is like high art. That's where my head was at. Jesus Christ. But he was always so supportive. Like, hey, how's the Pigeon Man story coming? And I would show him, sketches in my sketchbook, and he would indulge me. He would sometimes he would tease me in a funny way, we would tease each other about projects that we were trying to get off the ground. But it's like you find your people, you find your community of people that inspire and support your independence. We're not just freelance animators that are vying for the same slots. We're not in competition with each other. We're supporting one another. And if you find independent people that support your independent vision, you just found gold, my friend. Because that's the real shit. It's great if you get you both get hired and you're on a job together. That's wonderful. That's camaraderie too. But when between jobs, when somebody's supporting your independent attempts to express yourself, oh man, you just mounted a dragon. Hold on tight, baby. 'Cause that's the whole point. That is the whole point. Oh God, I've just been talking for half an hour. Anyway, cheers to y'all, and cheers to Jerold Howard.